Landon, my question to you is, as you guys are tracking this data and the strength of these brands, how much of this strength that's there in snacking is just the constant ebb and flows? Some products fall in favor at times, others fall out. Is there a chance that, once things reopen, the snacking goes to the wayside and the beverages come back? Or is this a real trend that we see shifting?
Yeah, I kind of hope it goes the wayside. I mean, we've got data on snacking, and it's incredible what happened during the lockdown. I mean, people, you talk about kids who go to college, they get the freshman 15. There's a COVID 15. I think that people had the lockdown, and a lot of people stayed home and ate very unhealthy. Pepsi is basically the carb company. It's either sugar in a drink or it's sugar in a plastic bag, and so the spike is incredible on the COVID. You can see this is people talking about snacking in some way. This is not Pepsi specific, but obviously because of their exposure to snacks, this is huge for them. And so it was on I would say fairly flat trajectory before this, and then huge spike in COVID, pulled back down. But now we're up about 36% year over year when we look at people talking about snacking. And so big trend for Pepsi. This is one that, as you guys talked about, this is leaving Coke out a little bit because they're the one, they don't make the snack food, they make drinks only. So Pepsi is definitely benefiting from this. And you can actually kind of see it in their top snacking brands here. It was fairly flat, and then you get a nice move to the upside starting around March when everything started locking down. And so again, it's got a bit of an ebb and flow to it, but overall, it's a rising tide that's lifting all snack companies, and so Pepsi's able to take advantage. Interestingly, though, as you've talked about, the stock is just, barely. I think it's actually a little bit below where it was right before the quarantine, below the February highs. So over the last 11 months or so. So while it does pay a nice dividend, the growth isn't there. So I'm guessing a lot of investors are, they're fine holding and they like the stability a little bit more, but they're probably jealous of some of their other investments or other people's investments who've just exploded. So, it's not a growth company. It's a little bit more stable. They are doing a lot of good things. They just launched snacks.com, and they're targeting this market, which is very good for them. Also, their drinks are doing well. Bubbly, Gatorade, Mountain Dew, Lipton, they're all doing very well. In fact, I would say that Bubbly has been a bit of a LaCroix killer. That stock was fantastic early on, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and everything looked up. But then as more competition got into the market, I think that Bubbly is sort of establishing itself as one of the leaders in the carbonated water market. And so the flavored carbonated water market. And so bad for LaCroix, good for Pepsi. But yeah, so far it's been a good pandemic for Pepsi. I know I hate to say that kind of thing, but they have benefited. But still, the stock isn't really taking off like maybe it could have. As far as the Super Bowl goes, we haven't seen a lot of, as far as social media, we haven't seen the Super Bowl really pay off in a huge way, especially the halftime show. Usually it's the ads that do a lot better. I don't know if you guys remember, a few years ago, we did a combination effort with TD Ameritrade where we analyzed which ads were top. And that year, Pepsi did the halftime show, but Coke had the #1 ad because they got the most views. It was the America the Beautiful ad. So anyway, I don't think a Super Bowl is a huge thing. I think really it's more about people working from home, schooling from home, and the fact that the kitchen and the pantry is right there. It's too hard to resist. So that's going to help Pepsi out.
Yeah, Landon, and if you think about that, some of the outliers are, currency issues with the dollar falling recently, but then also rising commodity costs, which also hurt these companies. But I agree with you. And, who knows who's going to be in the Super Bowl, right? The Bears aren't in it, so I probably won't even watch it. But if you take a look at this stock and the sentiment of it, do you see your sentiment tracking the stock where it's had a great grind higher over the last 20 years, but since the pandemic started and that initial bump, it's been in a consolidation range since April with this stock. Does that line up and match up with your sentiment data?
Yeah, so when we're looking at sentiment data, generally speaking, we're looking at what consumers are saying about the brands and the products, and it's been really steady. We're not looking at whether people are bullish or bearish on the stock. We're looking at, do they like all these brands? And it's been really steady. There hasn't been a huge flux. The only thing that really stood out was when Cheetos came out with their mac and cheese brand. and everyone went crazy for it. The only negative mentions were the fact that it was out of stock and sold out because everyone was trying to buy it. So that is kind of an outlier. I think they hit a home run with that. Cheetos mac and cheese, I haven't tried it. I guess it can't be too bad. But, that's the only one that's outlier. But otherwise, all the brands have been pretty steady with their happiness, fairly similar to Coke, pretty steady line and just kind of cranking away.
Keeping this Pepsi top snack mentions on the board here, and you really see that last big spike up towards the latter portion of that chart. That really reflects the beginning of the pandemic, doesn't it, Landon? And so I think this is an example. Maybe there's not a huge takeaway right now for Pepsi other than things are just kind of chugging along. But modern kind of portfolio theories and things would say, hey, to protect your portfolios in times of uncertainty, you should invest in consumer staples. Well, I'm looking at Coke and Pepsi, which are, poster childs for consumer staples, and I'm looking at a stock that sold off 40% in the uncertainty. That's not really any different than what the market did. But your data right here shows that in that depth of uncertainty, things were ramping up. People were buying these products. I'm guessing that was flashing a buy signal. I think this highlights the importance of what you're doing alongside Andy and Megan and all your team at LikeFolio to disrupt this industry and make us think about things a little bit differently and really reacting to what the consumer is actually doing.
No, I think that's a fantastic point because, you had the market selling off. You got Pepsi, along with everyone else, getting killed, sold off. I think that's down maybe 20, 30% during that pandemic. There were some companies that were down far more,
40.
but yeah, so there were some that were down even more than that. But the fact that this actually was helping the company is something that, a lot of people don't think about. There are obvious ones like Zoom that we've talked about a million times that obviously benefit from this kind of situation, even Logitech, where people buying webcams so they can work from home, things like that. But then you just don't think about, and it's unfortunate, about the fact that people just are going to snack a lot more, and Pepsi is going to be a beneficiary of that. And so, yeah, I think that is a great point. It does highlight a little bit of the power of what the LikeFolio data can do, because we've got data that shows, hey, this is a product that is benefiting from the current situation, and the current situation is causing the stock to go down dramatically. And so that divergence was a fantastic investment opportunity. Unfortunately for us, we found about 20 others that were better than that. And so Pepsi was pretty far down on our list. We did put out a report on March 23rd, I think, that highlighted 20 companies that were benefiting from COVID and that were extremely oversold. Pepsi probably would have came in at about 40 or 50 on that list, so they didn't make our top 20. But yeah, there was a lot of companies that benefited from COVID and that have had sales increase because of it. And it just took the investors a little while to get going. But what's interesting, if you look at that chart, there was a big ramp up in March or so, but it's holding now. So, unfortunately for Americans' waistlines, it looks like that habit is actually kind of locked in a little bit, and we're now become more snackers. So, maybe that'll reverse, but right now it looks good for Pepsi.
Interesting stuff, Landon. We'll leave it there. Landon Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com.